You all know this, but one of the things that we do in this place is we ask why questions. We explain things, we find meaning in things. It's the kind of special job that we do in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So, Bill, I wonder if I could start with you. Can you tell us something about why studying the humanities and the social sciences is important at the moment?
Look, I think everybody knows that when you study the humanities and social sciences discipline, if you have a passion or you have an interest in these disciplines, then it's going to be a really important life-changing journey for you. But personal interest isn't the only reason to study our disciplines. I mean, for one thing, we already know that they provide you with a whole bunch of important transferable skills that you can take with you to no any specific job, but a whole range of different jobs out there in the world. But also, they're integral to solving the sorts of problems the world faces these days. I mean, think about problems like climate change or like the pandemic. If you think about the pandemic, science plays an important role in this. Science tells us things like how a virus spreads. But then everything else from there requires the humanities and social sciences disciplines to convert scientific findings into the sorts of things that make a society safe or keep a society healthy. So scientists might tell us that we need to stay 2 meters away from one another or wear masks. But that has to be converted into, we've got to communicate that to people. And that takes communication disciplines like media studies, like education to educate people. And think about the vaccines and the vaccine hesitancy movement. To address vaccination hesitancy, it's not enough just to have a vaccine, you've got to have people taking it. How do we get people to take it when there's so much misinformation out there in the world? Well, then you need subjects like psychology, which look at and think about how people think and engage. Subjects like sociology, which understands how societies work. And subjects like Māori knowledge. So our disciplines are not only intrinsically interesting, they not only equip you with really important life skills, but they're integral to solving some of the problems that the world faces today.
Okay. So what's coming out from Bill's response is people. I keep hearing people coming through. Heather, Kirsty, Ian, how central are people to the sorts of things that we do in this place?
I'll start. Obviously, they're integral. I couldn't agree more with what you were saying, Bill, around the implementation of science actually involves connections, relationships, the ability to really understand different people's perspectives. There is, I think, one of the things that I really value about our centres and our learning areas is the ability to perspective take, that to understand that there is no right or wrong, that actually people's perspectives needs to be understood and listened to be able to connect and implement things which are really important in our society, such as health measures, for example. And I used to think that it was a bit of a failing on my part that I couldn't say this is the right answer. And now I really see what a strength that is, the understanding of multiple versions of reality and perspective taking, and that really is around connection and people. And I think that our subjects really enable us to understand those perspectives, to be able to speak those perspectives back to our communities, so we can actually understand the communities that we research and teach and work in, and so that we are actually really useful people. We're not kind of sitting in an ivory tower just kind of doing stuff that doesn't have real world application.
Yeah. And Heather, I'm just thinking of all of us in this conversation, when it comes to being useful with students, you're probably the most useful in the work that you do. So tell us something about why, from your point of view as somebody who's deeply engaged with students, why it's important to study the kinds of things that Bill and Ian and Kirsty do.
From my perspective, it's about forming those relationships. So when we are able to take on board that other person's perspective and able to put that in a contrast with our own, and then take a separate piece of knowledge that we might have about, in our context with the work that we do, about the university that a student might not have, and be able to share that to them in a way that they understand. That provides opportunities for growth, I think, and enlightenment, I suppose.
This all sounds really important to me. at a time in our history, both within Aotearoa New Zealand and globally, where there are big issues. Some of you have mentioned those. And we do that kind of stuff in this college. What's it like, Ian? What's it like studying those things in this place, in our particular college?
Well, kind of feeding off what Bill said about the importance of a kind of holistic understanding of kind of wicked problems that we face as a society. Well, that's built into the interdisciplinary structure of the BA itself, at the same time whilst developing expertise in a particular subject area. So you've got, if you take a BA, you take 5 core courses which introduce you to kind of concepts and approaches which span across the disciplines. Then you're going to major in a particular subject, and you'll take 8 courses in that. And then that leaves you with another 10 courses to choose from, which can be from any other subject within the college. And so, you know, the value of that is that you move beyond the idea that you're going to understand the world through just one perspective. And it encourages you to be much more kind of flexible in your kind of understanding of the world as well. And so, again, in an environment and in a society where thinking has become increasingly polarised and divisive and narrow-minded, it's incredibly important to kind of develop an understanding which is flexible, adaptable, multi-perspective. And that's key to the structure of the BA itself.
Okay. He's saying flexible, adaptive, fluid, and your head is nodding quite vigorously.
Yeah, I was just thinking about my own undergrad degree where I did a philosophy paper, which I loved. I did media, I did English, I even did a computer paper, which is so funny because I'm not very competent with computers. I did history, and as a psychologist, those other areas of knowledge are incredibly important around where we are now. How do we understand where we are now if we don't understand philosophical debates and we don't understand where we've been historically and we don't have a sense of different cultures through anthropology? So even though you end up with a kind of a specialist set of knowledge, it really is that holistic understanding of where we've been, who we are now, where we're looking to go to, that I think is really powerful in this particular qualification.
I'm just going to be a little bit sceptical. I'm going to be somebody's koro or auntie or mum or dad who says, oh yeah, that sounds like loads of stuff and maybe it doesn't actually sound like anything. Bill, put you on the spot. Loads of stuff in a BA.
Well, I think as both Kirsty and Ian have alluded to, the idea is that when you look at the problems we face today, there are a multiplicity of different ways of looking at things. I mean, take something like the prominence of science in our culture. You know, we all hear lots about STEM and the STEM subjects, and they are, of course, incredibly valuable to the furthering of society and everything. But even science, which professes to be value-free, even science has a particular perspective and a particular take on things. So if you talk to our colleagues, for example, in the Māori Studies department, they have very different ways of looking at some of these issues, and some of these alternative perspectives, different points of view or standpoints on issues, can be really useful to just open up new ways of looking and new ways of thinking at old problems. And once we can train people to take up multiple perspectives, which is what we do by encouraging students to look at things from different ways, both through the core and through the choice they have. You become experts, but also generalists. And I think that just means that we equip our people, we equip the next generation with a wide range of skills and abilities to just see things differently. And that's what we need. We need to see things differently and see things from alternative points of view, because that opens up new ways of doing things, new ways of solving problems, and new ways of being.
Mm-hmm. And you can kind of deepen your knowledge in a kind of canny way by thinking about the connections, you know, through your disciplines as you're taking the different subjects. And some of these connections have already been alluded to. For example, you know, within media studies, if you're thinking about and studying the relationship between users of social media and media audiences, you're already making assumptions or hypotheses about the relationship between media and human behaviour. And so obviously that takes us into the realms of psychology, you know, it's centred upon human behaviour. Also, in terms of media studies, when we're thinking about the role of the media in perpetuating or challenging inequalities in society, both on screen or behind the scenes, that takes us into the realms of sociology as well, where inequality is kind of central to the foundation. And so part of it is kind of thinking about those connections, and your lecturers can help you make those connections, but also Heather and the team at Base Plus can also help you kind of think about how you might plan a program of study which develops those combinations in a really productive way.
Okay.
To me, it's the difference between seeing the world in 2D and seeing the world in 3D. I can look at the glass from that angle down low and just see one thing, or I can take sociology and psychology and philosophy and linguistics and history and see all the way around that glass and the different things that it could be, or it is, or the way it's interpreted.
I really like that metaphor. Okay, so we're a 3D kind of place and not a 2D kind of place. But what is it about us? What is it about humanities and the social sciences at Te Kuninga Purua, at Massey University, a couple of campuses, distance education? We're an unusual kind of a university. What's the case for coming to study those kinds of 3D things with us?
I guess I see one of our strengths is diversity. In terms of the students, I think that we are a place that actively welcomes people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, cultures, demographics, as a place to say, we welcome your perspective as well, and I think that that's that 3D element. The world is a really polarised place, and there's huge dangers in that, and to be able to connect, I think all the lecturers that I know, and I'm sure that this is the case with my colleagues here, are able to sit with uncertainty and welcome discussion and debate in our classes. We're not going to sit here and say, this is the answer and therefore you must tell us this back. We're interested in discussing and hearing from our students about what they have to bring. It's a collaborative learning kind of experience. Obviously, we have expertise and we want to share that with people, but we don't say we're the experts in everything. And I think there's a really important distinction there, that the students that I sit in front of who may have lived experience in particular areas have expertise that I'm keen to collaborate with and learn from for their best learning experience, so that we can actually, do something really special together during their learning journey. Okay.
We love teaching here. You do. I know all of you. I've known you well for a number of years in some cases. We know students' names. We put a lot of time and a lot of energy. We take that part of our job really seriously. We do the research stuff, but we're really serious about our students, and maybe you more than any of us actually, because it's what you do. You hold that together for the college.
Yeah, and it's something that we really enjoy having within our college. We've got our dedicated support service in Base Plus, and we really enjoy working with our first year students, helping them to transition into understanding the way the university works, because it is a different learning environment from what we've been brought up with in school. And there's a lot more self-directed, and there's a lot more opportunity to challenge and speak and engage with people who know a lot. Helping students to find their voice and the opportunity to participate fully is really rewarding for us as a team in Base Plus.
All of you, one way or another, have referred to wicked problems, polarised societies, challenging times. We can make a contribution to those things. We know that the world of work is changing, and there is a lot of discussion these days about things called transferable skills, and I have no idea what that means. So I know nothing about what transferable skills are. What are they? Why would I need to have them? How do I find them in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences? I start with Bill Fish.
So if you look at the world of work as it is, as it was, and as it will be, one of the things we know is that it's not going to look like it looks now 10, 20, 30 years in the future. We know that people are going to do numerous jobs in their life. The job you do straight out of university is not likely to be the job you'll be doing later in your life. So how do you equip yourself to move into this space, to move into this world of work? It could be quite an anxiety-inducing thing to face a future where you don't know what sorts of skills and abilities you're going to need. So the best thing you can do in that situation is to equip yourself with what we call transferable skills. They're the sorts of skills of being able to take on a new body of information and evaluate it and consider it in the light of other knowledge, to learn new skills quickly and to become adept in new things as the world changes. So when we talk about transferable skills, we're talking about the sort of meta-level ability to move in new spaces, to get yourself comfortable and adept in new spaces quickly, because these are the spaces that people are going to be having to engage in as they move through their working life.
There's something about uncertainty in here, isn't there? And Kirsty, I know that you do a lot of this work in your various capacities. What's your experience of the ways in which young people, and not so young people, deal with uncertainty? How can we help them? What's our role in this?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of narrative of the job that you're going to do doesn't exist yet is something that young people are really well aware of, and so it does make it very difficult when it comes to, I need a skill set, I need to have some skills that therefore mean that I will have a job and a house and all of these things that young people are actually thinking about from a really early age, sort of from the time they start high school. Being able to sit with uncertainty and know that you've got some skills that you could apply in a variety of different situations is really comforting and important. If I think about things such as doing research, you know, in our area, we encourage people to think about, when you go and look at a source, think about who wrote it, what perspective were they taking. Nothing is value free. Look at multiple sources, look at multiple perspectives, because then you'll actually get a real idea of actually an issue, whether it's history, whether it's something currently. Anyone can Google something, but actually to know to look at more than one source and to kind of really think about a source and analyse and integrate information and be able to critique it is something that would work in any particular area of work that someone might want to go into in the future. And the other element of that for me is really important is the ability to work in a team and to actually work with people, to not end up being a polarised kind of person yourself who therefore can't work alongside other people who may come from different perspectives and different communities and different walks of life. So being exposed to different ideas at university is one of the key things that we encourage at university, and therefore to be able to sit with that uncertainty and the lack of there is one answer, I think is a real strength of our qualifications.
Right. Heather, you and I have talked about this before, you know, your own experiences at realising after the event how valuable some of the things that you had learned in your own undergraduate courses had been. And you work with our young people. Yeah. Some of whom experience that uncertainty and are just kind of casting around for a bit of direction. So you've got a kind of privileged position on this in the college. What do you see?
Yeah, well, what do I see? Well, first I just want to say the thing that's been going through my mind, as Kirsty and Bill have been talking, is that transferable skills are the skills that you have that you don't appreciate until you stop and think about them. And that's definitely what I saw in my own life, my own career. I've had 7 distinct positions in the university over 17 years of tenure here. So I've been in one job, one place as far as certain forms that I fill in. But I've used the transferable skills that I learned in my Bachelor of Arts to pivot and take on different roles, and they were quite distinct roles. Some were processing roles, some were customer service roles, leadership roles now. So you see the skills develop over time, I think, but by actually engaging with your degree and conversations with your lecturers and your peers to actually about what these transferable skills are and potentially why we're talking about them now, is so that you're ahead of the game if you can recognise them, is what we need to be doing, because otherwise you're 15 years down the track and you haven't actually realised that you've been using the skills you learned in your degree in the first all along.
As I listen to the 4 of you talk, I can see something really interesting emerging, which is we have big challenging problems in our world and we have the question of work. And then in the middle, the thing that joins these two things together is what you've been talking about in the context of your comments on transferable skills, because that capacity to sit with discomfort, to think critically, to communicate clearly, to develop relationships, these are things that are transferable to the work sector and also to the big wicked problem sector. So we've got everything covered basically in this college, haven't we?
And one other thing I'd add to that is because people are at the centre of everything we do. You know, the word we call them humanities disciplines for a reason, because human beings are at the centre of our study, humans and societies. Because people are at the centre of what we do, there's always a strong ethical dimension that's shot through our study, and the things we think about and the things we value. So when we're facing these problems or engaging with other people in the workspace or looking at information online, there's this sense of care and attention to how this affects people, which I think can sometimes get lost, but is a really important part of what we bring to the table, is an ethical dimension of care and looking after people. And I think that's important to all of us and what we do.
Definitely. And, you know, and then I was just thinking in all these conversations how the pleasure you get from watching kind of students grow across those 3 years is you take someone that enters and maybe a bit nervous, a bit uncertain about what they're going to do, maybe a bit kind of thinking in fairly kind of simple ways based on what they've learned in high school. And through our modes of assessment, through the structure of the BA, we kind of broaden their outlook on the world and develop skills in teamwork, as we mentioned about, develop skills in leadership, talking in front of people, presenting, etc., being able to think outside the box, to come back to those ideas of flexibility that we talked about earlier. And so by the end, you've got this person who's so much more confident and so much more able to work in a variety of contexts and to lead those contexts. And we take pride in that, but then, like Bill's saying, that's because we care about people.
These are big things. And I can imagine that each of you has had about a gazillion experiences with that student who you've seen transform, or you've seen blossom, or you've seen the scales drop. What's your favourite student story? You only get one. Just one. Pick you. Start with you. What's the favourite student story?
My favourite student story is actually one of my staff members. So she started as a first year student who came to university because she didn't want to be a statistic. She didn't want to be another Māori Pasifika youth without a qualification. And by the time she reached the end of her degree, she had really transformed and grown, and she's just finishing her master's thesis today and is full-time employed here at the university. So she's my favourite.
Who's your favourite?
Probably one of my students who's a bit of a cheeky chappy and a bit of a character, and maybe didn't apply himself as much as he could have done at the beginning. Probably came in that kind of lack of sense of direction maybe to begin with, and then came in and through the BA, through doing media studies within the BA, doing other courses like politics, comes out, and ends up working in kind of as a kind of running comms for charitable organisations in Wellington, making a real difference to disadvantaged people in society. That makes you proud to just think, you can kind of come in, one way and then come out the other and make a really valuable difference to society, also with a set of skills in terms of media production, runs his own company as well. I mean, it's great to see that transformation. And that's about that kind of ethics, teaching that kind of ethics and kind of political responsibility as well. And so, I guess, it's just one of many that kind of makes me proud.
One of thousands.
Yep.
My favourite story is about a man called Norman, whose grandma scraped him off the streets of South Auckland about 15 years ago. He was not well and he kept bad company, and she hauled him down to Palmerston North and enrolled him in a BA. And 3 years later, when Norman walked across the stage at graduation, his nana was there, and she had brought down 3 vans worth of people from Otara, and they all got up and they did their thing when Norman walked across the stage. And we've all done that, eh? We've all sat on that stage and we've watched people and we've thought, oh yeah, we know where you've come from. And it is a profound privilege and just a glorious thing to be a part of. And then they go out into the world and they become media production people or whatever. Where do your students go?
I mean, there's 1 or 2 jobs out there that you do need a particular body. If you're going to be a vet, for example, you probably better study vet. You're not going to do that with a BA, but almost anything else. I mean, we've done surveys where nearly 100 different jobs were listed on a survey of where our graduates end up a few years after graduation. We're not going to sit here and list 100 different jobs. The point is it's almost like, where can't they go?
That's really
rather than where can you go?
Yeah. And it's interesting you raised that survey, Bill, because I looked through that paperwork the other day, and we have students studying BAs who are vets and who are the MDs of businesses and who come from the NZ Defence Forces and who are engineers. So we bring people in from all kinds of walks of life, and then we send them out there as well. And you're right, we did that survey of 3 years worth of graduating students, and we had something like 97 different job titles, and they were right across the public and the private and the not-for-profit sector. And so I think that really speaks to that point that you made earlier on, which is our qualifications often don't sound like a job, but they will position you for any job, particularly at a time in which we know high proportion of our young people will be going into work which doesn't even exist today. And that can be unsettling, but on the other hand, it's also an opportunity because we can tool them up with things that will position them for whatever comes down the line 5, 10, 15 years from now.
You know what I noticed about a lot of the students that I have seen go on though, Richard, is that they're really happy when they can make a contribution to whatever they're doing, and they can see that they're doing a job that adds value to society, to business, to the outcomes of other individuals or whānau or iwi, and that's where I see our students being, is content with their contribution to the world.
Okay.
Totally agree, and I think that's a really important point because increasingly people are really mindful of their own well-being. We want to have jobs that are meaningful and that match with our ethics and values in life. So people being able to go back to their communities with a set of skills that could work in many layers of different jobs and areas in the community is really important. For some people, the BA is a key to the next door, to the next piece, and they may want to work in a different layer in terms of such as psychology, and that's obviously really important as well. But for some people, they've got the skills that they need to go back to their community, to the people that are important to them, and make a difference, because that feeds back into that wellbeing loop in terms of actually a happier, more content society, actually, which is more connected, I think, as well, in terms of relationships between people.
I'm listening to each of you talk about your experiences, the experiences of your students, the whānau and the communities from which they came and to which they return. And I see this big, powerful, worthwhile thing. It will help you find work, but it will also help you contribute to the places that you are a part of. So it is much, much more than a thing that you study for 3 or 5 or 7 years' time, isn't it?
It's a way of life in some ways. I think being, it's not so much learning a discipline. It's learning to be a certain kind of person, a certain way, learning to engage in the world in a particular way. I think when we turn out graduates, we don't, as we've been saying, we don't turn out people who only possess a body of knowledge. We turn out people who possess knowledge, sure, but also who possess a wide range of skills that they can then use in almost any domain they find themselves in. But we also turn out people who know and understand the world in which they live, that can engage with the communities that they engage with or they serve, and that they can just bring value to a wide variety of different places and different locations that they find themselves in. So it's not so much just a degree, it's becoming a different kind of person at the other end of it.
Okay, I'm sold. Where can I sign up? Thank you, Ian, Kirsty, Heather, Bill. Really appreciate the fact that you've taken some time from working with your students and your communities and your colleagues and your base people to come and talk about the work that we do in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences.